Today we have a very short session with our very best friend Michelle in our studio with the latest Sony 50mm G F1.2 with the A7 III. Special shout out to Sony for sending us this lens, and we are so excited to use this lens throughout these portrait sessions. You might be wondering why we're shooting in a dark environment like this, and the reason behind it is because we want to test out the low light capability of the F1.2. So without further ado, let's get started.
The very first tips is to find the light. One of the simplest solutions is to look for a source of light, being existing lights or from the off-camera flash. If you are shooting on the streets, then I would advise looking around you for interesting light source to serve as an ambient or key light for your subject. But in our case, we are using the window light as the key light. I want to say a huge thank you to Sony Malaysia for sending us this 51.2 G earlier, and we can test it out during this shoot. I do want to mention that this is not a paid review and they never expect me to say anything in particular. Instead, they hope us to give a very honest thought for this lens, and this is what we're going to do for this video. I think recently Sony has been doing some amazing work for their G series. The 35mm and the 50mm were just so lightweight, small, and it feels so solid in hand. Physically, I have no complaints so far, but how about the image quality? Since we are shooting in low light situations, and there's no surprise that we will most likely get a noisier, blurrier image than usual, but when we zoom in, surprisingly we still can get so much detail, such as the skin, the eye, and even the hair on her face.
ISO 4000, we are pushing the limit. So right now we're going to turn this backdrop because I need a bit more sun. I need a bit more moonlight. Alright, let's do it. Set right here. 1/60. Let's try.
For the next tip, always use a slower shutter speed. A good rule of thumb that I learned is always use at least the same shutter speed that's equivalent to your focal length. For example, if you are using a 50mm, you should use at least 1/50th of a second.
Yeah, this is good, Yeah.
So dark, the shots. Do you think it's okay? This is super low light.
So right now, there's no longer any sunlight, we only have a very subtle moonlight going on, so I would suggest tips number 3, using external light. You can always treat it as a key light or treatments, which can be easily done with any flash that's always on you. It can be a phone or even from a small portable LED light. In my case, I'm using the Broll P1 portable RGB lights. By adding key light or fill light, it creates a cleaner image. I understand that F1.2 allows you to gather tons of light, but there's so much a lens can achieve, especially when it comes to a darker environment. So a light will be a good support to create a cleaner image. Something to keep in mind, you only use one light source for these particular shoots, and the 50mm F1.2 G perform extremely well, as you can see from here. The eye autofocus track perfectly even we are not in a very nice lit situation. Okay, love it. Even though I'm pushing my ISO to compromise the shutter speed, yet I'm still able to remain the ISO under 3200, which brings us to the next tip where a wide aperture lens can be very helpful. Typically, a fast lens allows you to let most of the amount of light into your camera. This allows you to use a faster shutter speed without compromising on the ISO, which I mentioned earlier is one of the reasons why images become noisy and grainy. So here is an example of photos that shoot with f2.8 compared to f1.4. It might not sound like much, but visually it's very telling. At a 2-stop exposure difference, the wider aperture lens is truly winner. The lens I'm using here is the 51.2, which allows me to create a way cleaner image for a low light situation like this. So right now, as you can see, I was a bit struggling with the autofocus for this shoot. The IAF doesn't work that well, but don't get me wrong, the autofocus is still fast, as you can see from here, but the IAF doesn't work that great when there's a glass in front of Michelle. So to keep things going, I decided to switch to manual focus.
Now it's struggling. Yep.
The same thing happens, the IAF doesn't detect Michelle's in a wide focus area mode. So instead of switching to the manual focus, I give a try using the flexible spot, since I'm always framing my shot in the rule of third, and it works.
Slow down me a bit, but it's okay. Yep, this is good.
I really love these scenes because the street light creates some beautiful bokeh in f1.2 and it's really clean and well defined. Something I love about this lens is the compressions and the depth. It really shows off what a 50mm can really do for portrait photography.
Spice thing up. Let's go for blue. Bit more contrast because now we have like a warm lights as the key lights. So let's go for some blue so that we have a good contrast. I'm going to just slightly put it behind somewhere here. Good thing about small light is you can just put it anywhere you feel like putting it easily.
So the very last tip is about stabilizations. When it comes to low light, you are most likely use a slower shutter speed according to the scenes. But if you are not careful, this could result in blurry images. To manage that, you should always hold your camera as still as possible to prevent any blurry results. Thanks to the latest technology we have today, our life has been better and easier with the lens stabilization and the camera in-body stabilizations. Unfortunately, the Sony 50mm G Master doesn't offer any lens stabilizations, but most of Sony mirrorless camera offers in-body stabilizations which give us 3 to 5 stop stabilizations, like the one that I'm using, the A7 III. To wrap things up, don't be afraid to push your camera to its limits. Nowadays, our camera have gone so advanced and you can get really amazing images or videos even if the environment is not ideal. That being said, you shouldn't abuse technology by shooting at 256,000 ISO because you are too lazy to set up an external light source. I'm pretty sure the result wouldn't be ideal either. What I'd like to emphasize is that you should know and master your gears well. Some gears can be very expensive, but this is why they can perform so well consistently and help you to push your creativity boundaries. And this is what you pay for. So there we have it, some tips for shooting low light photography. And until next time, create, learn, and have fun. I'll see you guys in the next video.